Have you ever wondered why it is so hard for people to understand each other? Have you ever wondered why it is so difficult for you to understand your spouse or your child or your best friend? Or why can't they understand you? I'm going to talk about that today because I think that's one of the problems that we have, is trying to figure out how each of us works and why we don't all think alike. So before I get into it, please hit like and subscribe. And if you find something along the way that you think is going to be helpful to somebody else, please share it with them, because I really believe that this is important stuff that can be helpful to anyone that is in any kind of human relationship. So, many of you have heard of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It is a personality test survey to help us understand better what's going on. There are a lot of personality inventories out there. Ocean, the big five, is Ocean, which is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And that one's used a lot. I've heard it referenced by people like Jordan Peterson, who talk about personality. There are many others. They go through the different colors and all of this other stuff. Everything is a little bit of a different take. The Myers-Briggs is a test, if you call it that, that will help assess the way that people function on different levels, different planes. And it has been helpful to a lot of people. I can't say that it's one of the best ones out there, but it's one of the most often used ones that are out there. So I want to talk about that because I think it can be very beneficial. The Myers-Briggs breaks down our personality into basically 4 different arenas. One is how you recharge your battery. Another is how you know things. The third one is how you decide, how you make decisions. And the fourth area is how you structure or plan your life. So understanding what each of these is really helps. And we fall into basically, a 4 different, there are possibly 16 different combinations of these types. So the very first one is how you recharge your battery. How you recharge your battery, we refer to this whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. So an introvert, at the end of the day, they are exhausted. They've been working with people all day long. They are just, I don't want to be touched anymore. Just leave me alone. Let me have my book. Let me take a bath. Let me snuggle up to my favorite person. That's what an introvert does at the end of a long, hard, trying day. So imagine, if you will, that the introvert is married to an extrovert. And that happens a lot. Believe me, it does. And at the end of a long, trying day, all the extrovert wants to do is go out and hang with his friends. He wants to party. He wants a lot of people around him because that's how he gets energized. He or she. I've been in the extrovert category myself, so I know about this. But this person, this extrovert, is getting their battery recharged. They get pumped up. It's like a new kind of high. They think that their energy is gone, but somebody says, hey, let's go out and let's go dancing, and they say, I'm tired, but yeah, let's do it. And by the time they're there, they've been there for 15 minutes, they are so pumped and they're ready to go for several more hours. That's an extrovert. And imagine again If you have an extrovert and an introvert, that could be a problem, because the introvert just wants to go home and snuggle up with a book or their honey, and the extrovert wants to go party, and that's tough. So understanding the extrovert, I think, is has to understand that the introvert just physically cannot go on with to that party at the end of the day. That they are not antisocial. It's not that they don't like people or don't get along well with others. It's that they just have nothing left. Their cup is empty. And that's how they get recharged. The second one is how we know things. And this is the person who is thinking or sensing. Sorry, I screwed that up. How you know things is intuition or sensing. So somebody who is sensing can use their 5 senses. They can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it, they can smell it, they can taste it. And that's how they know what's going on. And they can list all of those things. They're very good at giving you every reason and detail. The sensing person is going to drive the intuitive person a little bit nuts, and the intuitive person is going to drive the sensing person even more nuts, because the intuitive person is unable to really tell you exactly how they know what they know. They just know it on a gut level. And it's maddening to the sensing person who wants to hear, well, did you see it? What did you see? What did you taste? What did you feel? What did you hear? What did you smell? But the intuitive person just can't do it. I heard a story years ago, an example of this, talking about a firefighter in a burning building. His whole crew, they're putting out this fire, and then the leader of the team says, everybody out now. Everybody exits the building. Seconds later, the building collapses. And so people will ask, how did you know the building was going to collapse? How did you know? And he said, I don't know. I just felt it. I felt it. It just, in my gut, I knew it. But if you think about the firefighter, he had a lot of experience putting out fires. He could see the timbers burning. He could see the change in the color of the flames. He could hear the timbers cracking, perhaps. He might have felt the heat, the temperature got to us in the building, got to a certain level. There may have been a certain smell in the building that he detected. Even though they have the facial mask on, there's still smells that come through. There might have even been a taste in the air that he was breathing in through his respirator while he's fighting this fire. So he's taking in, all of his sensors are still working. He's taking in all of this information, and it was processing at a level that was subconscious. And he knew in his gut it was time to get out of the building. So it's not that the senses weren't working, it's that he just wasn't conscious of those senses at the time. And he really couldn't tell you how he knew what he knew. But that's how he knew. I always tell people, trust your intuition, because your intuition is picking up on, is using your senses on some level to pick up on things. As someone who is more on the intuitive side, I have to really work at asking myself, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I tasting? What am I smelling? What's going on? And when we do that, we can communicate better with other people, with the sensing people, what's going on. But we have to really think about it. And then, so we've talked about how we recharge our battery. we talked about how we know, and then there's how we decide. And this one, confession time, when I score on this, I used to score a 0 on thinking, because I wanted to make all of my decisions based on my feelings. That it didn't feel right. I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings. I didn't want to feel bad. It was so much emotion that went into my decisions. And then I was teaching, and you can't do that when you're teaching. I had to learn that I had to establish a very clear rubric, a guideline to grade the papers and the projects that my students were turning in. I didn't like giving someone a poor grade, but when I followed the rubric, I could say, this is what you were supposed to do. It was very clearly described what you needed to do, what had to happen for you to get a 100 on this paper or this project. And if you did not follow it, it clearly delineated exactly how many points you would lose for each thing that you did wrong. So I had to follow that. Thinking people don't have any problem with that. Follow the rubric, that's the rules. We do it, we know what's right and wrong. Everything, the world is kind of black and white, and we don't let our emotions get involved. So the thinking person doesn't have a problem with that. The feeling person, on the other hand, tends to be, they'll do it if they can. They'll use their feelings if they can, but when they have to, they can use the thinking aspect of that. So we've talked about how you recharge your battery. We've talked about how you know what you know, and we've talked about how you decide what you decide. And the fourth area is how you plan or order or structure your life. And the terms here are perceiving and judging. So a perceiving person just does whatever they perceive is right at the time. What's the next thing to do? They're very loose, very live in the moment. They don't need to plan ahead. They are just great. And I fall more into that category because it's fun. I just, my itinerary is usually, I've got my flight and I'm going to go, and then we'll just see what happens. That's about the extent of my itinerary. Someone who is on the judging end of this spectrum is probably going to become very impatient with me. They want an itinerary. They want to plan everything out. They have a list of what goes in the suitcase. They know where they're going to go, who's going to pick them up when they get there. They know exactly what they're going to do next. They know where they're going to eat. They have everything mapped out. That's the judging person. So you can see how this might be a problem for people who are going on vacation or just planning their weekend or planning date night. If you've got, the person, if you're planning a date night, there's one person who wants to know where you're going to go, what time you're going to be there. It's just going to be very, very well mapped out. But the perceiving person says, oh, it's date night. What are we going to do? Let's just go over here. They don't think about it in advance. They don't make those plans. And again, that can be very problematic when you have two people who are very, very different. So those are things that you need to really pay attention to, that those are differences. These are not things that we can necessarily change about someone or necessarily change in ourselves. We can adapt. I can make an itinerary. I can make a rubric. I can list the senses. And I can, if I need to, spend more time at home with my book than outside partying. But of the four different areas, that's probably the most difficult one for us to adapt and adjust to. But understand that they are all problematic for us if we are different. If you're perfectly aligned with your spouse, your partner, congratulations, you're ahead of the game. But most people are not, because a lot of times we are attracted to somebody who is our opposite, who is different than us, because that balances out. It says that there's complementarity in our relationship. Your strengths may be my weaknesses, and so we work together to pull together. One of the things that is really important to recognize here also is that this is not a binary, a dichotomy. This is a spectrum. There's a range. Somebody might be way on one end of the of how they decide, and the other person way on the other. But they could both be in the middle and about the same. Just slight differences. So understand that there are degrees of introversion or extroversion. There are degrees of sensing and feeling. There are degrees of thinking and feeling. And then there are degrees of judging and perceiving. There are degrees, not, yes, it's not a black and white yes or no area. If you're interested in doing more of this or looking into this for yourself, there are things you need to be aware of. One is that typically personality is not going to be fully shaped until we're around age 25. So it may change between age 13 and 25. You can still change it. You can still massage it, because life experiences do that to us. But again, you don't know that it's going to be necessarily fixed until about age 25 to 30. And then another thing you need to be aware of, if you want to take the Myers-Briggs type personality type inventory, understand that when you take that, this is about preferences, not what you do, but what you would want to do if you had a choice. So going back to the person who is an introvert, they will go out at night and party with their friends. It's just going to take them, they're going to probably have to have a nap before they go out. They have to recharge their batteries somewhere along the way. That if you are a feeling decider, if you make your decisions based on feelings, but you're teaching a class, you have to develop a rubric, and you have to use the thinking side of you to do it, even though you don't necessarily prefer that mode of operation. So understanding that we are different and that we may change over time is really important. I also want people to understand that this is not about trying to get somebody else to change. There was a book written by a guy named David Kiersey called Please Understand Me, and it's based on the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and saying that this is for us to understand each other, not to change each other. Also to understand ourselves so that we can perhaps adapt a little bit better in those situations where we might be challenged. But understanding is most important in relationships. Understanding where we're coming from. That I don't think that you're being an antisocial creep because you don't want to go out. I understand that you're tired, and you understand that I need a little time with my friends from time to time because I need that extra charge on my battery. I'm going to link a website below that is really good, helpful for you if you're interested in learning more. And you can read about the different types, and you can learn more about yourself and each other. And I hope you guys will, again, share this if you think it can be helpful, and hit like and subscribe. That'll be helpful to me. And I'll catch you guys next time.